So here we've got the 5 original pieces to the Darksaber. We've got the top emitter, the bottom little pommel piece, the guard, and the 2 main body pieces. Let's go over some of the materials that you're going to need to put this thing together. First though, I do want to mention that I do sell this DIY kit in my shop online with the file creator's permission, of course. So if you want to complete this project by yourself, as well as support the channel, that's a great way to do it. I really appreciate it. Now, let's get into some of the supplies you're going to need in order to assemble this guy. With me here, I have E6000 glue. This stuff is really good at holding things together. It does take a bit of time for it to fully cure. I usually let them sit overnight before they're fully finished, but I think it takes around 24 hours for it to fully cure. Which is why I also have with me this Loctite super glue, but you can get any, it's called cyanoacrylate super glue. This stuff will bond a lot faster and will hold it in place while our E6000 does its work. So this thing is pretty easy to assemble. I'm first going to attach the 2 main bodies together. They have little connector pieces. You can see some circles here and then some indents there. So they just fit in together. What I'm going to do is apply a small drip of E6000 just along the inside a little bit to one piece. And then I'm going to apply the super glue to the other piece. Now the super glue works best when there's a kind of tight friction between fits. So this is going to work very well because this model fits together pretty well. So they just slid together and pretty simply. I don't know what else to tell you guys. So we're going to do the same for the guard. Just a little smidgen of E6000. Once this fully cures, it's going to be almost impossible to rip this guy apart. The print itself will probably break before the glue will give away. So since the super glue likes friction so much and really tight spaces, I'm applying it to the inside rings of the guard, and this should just slip on as well. If you find some pieces not fitting, you can always grab a pair of pliers or something and make a few trims around the connector pieces. I've had to do that a few times since this print does have such low tolerances. For the pommel piece, I'm just going to add some super glue. It really won't slide out. I'm not too worried about it since it's such a tight fit. Okay, we're gonna get a little bit crazy up here. There. As you can see, now it's in there all the way. And we can move on to the last piece, the topper. So again, we'll go back to the 6000 super glue combo. And again, it just slides right on there. You might need to wiggle it on a little bit. Oh, oops. There we go. That is why we're going to wait for the E6000 to fully cure before we start sanding it. We want it to be as solid as possible, so wait for your glue to cure. Our next step is going to be smoothing out some of these 3D printer lines. This next step is optional, but of course if you want the best finish, you're going to need to do a little bit of sanding. So now that our glue is fully cured, we have a solid base for us to start sanding. Here I grabbed some Rust-Oleum filler primer. This stuff is kind of like really thick spray paint, so you're going to want some gloves as well as maybe some lung protection. This stuff is going to work really well for smoothing out those really small 3D printer lines. Here you can see me applying it in pretty hefty doses and pretty close range. So you might see a little bit of dripping, but that's nothing that we can't sand off later. The important part here is to make sure that you have good coverage and that you can fill in a lot of those 3D printer lines. Generally what I'll do is apply 2 to 3 coats, waiting about 20 minutes in between each coat to let it dry a little bit, and then I'll wait 24 hours before I start to sand to give the paint or the filler primer enough time to fully cure. So once that's done, we can move on to sanding. Once the filler primer is cured, we'll start sanding. I like to sand with a kind of rougher 150 grit and following that up with a much finer 300 grit to really finish it off well. You're also going to need kind of a microfiber cloth to wipe off all the dust, and we're going to use some black spray paint as the base paint for this lightsaber. So generally just grab a small piece of 150 grit sandpaper and basically just get to town. You're probably going to do a lot of sanding for this, but nothing too extreme. Once you've got the entire saber sanded over with the 150 grit, go ahead and wipe off all the dust and then go over it again with the 300 grit. That's really going to make this thing really smooth. You won't be able to tell it was 3D printed at all after this. Once you've got it fully sanded and smooth, grab your black spray paint and just give it a pretty healthy coating. Obviously you don't want to create runs at this point since we hopefully won't be sanding anymore after this, but make sure that the lightsaber is completely coated in black. This is going to play very well into our next step, which is painting. For painting, you're going to need a few materials. First, get some gloves. Second, we're going to need our paint. I use a metallic aluminum spray paint. Lastly, you're going to need some paper towels. Basically what we're going to do is grab a few pieces of paper towel, use our spray paint on just a tiny section of it, and then we're going to wipe the still fresh paint gently over our lightsaber. This is going to wipe paint over the higher areas while leaving the recessed areas black still. This is going to give it a great aged look and a nice kind of rustic metallic effect. So just wipe on the paint until you kind of start to feel it slow down, or maybe the paint dries up a bit, and then just spray on a new section of paper towel and repeat until you're finished. Now you want to be extra careful to apply as light of pressure as you can, otherwise you'll end up just painting the whole thing silver with a paper towel. You really need that light touch so that you only get the high areas while leaving the low areas black. I really like this method. I use it for a lot of my props and armor, and the best part is it's very simple. All you need are paper towels and a spray paint can. If there are any portions that you painted mistakenly, you can always follow it up with some black acrylic and a paintbrush. That is it, guys. We've got our fully finished Darksaber here. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. I hope that you're either able to do this with your own 3D printer. If not, again, I do sell this in my shop online. You can find the link in the description. So, thanks for watching, guys. I hope to see you again next time.